Welcome to the Minnesota Vikings Now. I'm your host for today's show, Patrick Siepman. And on today's show, we got three topics that we're going to be discussing. First off, the Vikings signed a cornerback, a former New England Patriot. We'll start off with that. And then Daneille Hunter, does he want out? Does he want a contract extension? We'll break down the rumors around him. And then a possible Budda Baker trade. He just requested a trade from the Arizona Cardinals, so we'll touch on that as well. But before we dive into all that and more, we are actually in a little bit of a sub-battle just for this week. So Broncos breakdown, they challenged my man Trace and I to a sub-battle, and they got the early lead. They're at 27 subs this week. Saints now is at 22, and we are only at 12. So if you guys want to help me out, help kind of support this Vikings fan base, and help just get more Vikings videos headed your way, go down there and hit that subscribe button. So the Vikings did end up signing a quarterback. Clap it up for them. They definitely needed to do that. The Vikings agreed to terms with cornerback Joejuan Williams, a former second-round pick out of the University of Vanderbilt. And he was with the New England Patriots before he obviously head over to the Minnesota Vikings. And, man, if you look at his height and weight here, it's got to excite you a little bit. He's 6'4", 208 pounds. And like I mentioned, he's the second-round pick out of Vanderbilt. And he has had a very slow start to the NFL career. If you ask Patriots fans, what do you think about Joejuan Williams? They'll say he sucks, but he is still got kind of that upside potential being a second-round pick. But speed is a big red flag for him. He ran a 4.64 40 at the combine, just not kind of that top-end speed you want from the cornerback position. But looking at what the Vikings have going on at the cornerback position, Byron Murphy, I think he's more probably better suited off as a cornerback 2 in the NFL. Obviously, we know the question marks around Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr., how they're going to kind of develop in year 2 in the NFL. They both dealt with injuries through year 1, but they still have kind of upside, and how they'll kind of fit with Brian Flores will be interesting. But my overall take on this is, I just feel like this was very, very much needed. Obviously, this is not a kind of home run signing. This isn't you going and signing a guy like Marcus Peters or trading for a guy like Jalen Ramsey, which the Dolphins did. But just adding in another depth piece to this roster was much needed. And I do expect more of these moves to be made. The Vikings, before this move, they really only had 5 corners on their roster that they could roll out heading into the next season. Now they have 6. And really out of those 6, I really only think 3 of them are guarantees to make the Vikings roster next year. So I expect more moves to be made, whether they sign another corner here before the NFL draft, but definitely in the NFL draft, I expect the Vikings maybe targeting a corner in round 1 at pick 23. If they end up staying there, obviously rumors on them and trading up and down for a quarterback, they always get tossed out there. But I expect the Vikings to keep making moves to this cornerback position. But I'll ask you guys this on today's pinned comment. Will the Vikings add another cornerback? Whether it's free agency, like I said, or the NFL draft, get your thoughts down in the comment section. So it'll be the pinned comment on today's video. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break your way right now. Just sit back, let it play, and go down there and answer today's pinned comment. Now we got to talk about it. Daneille Hunter. The report came out earlier today that he is not expected to attend the start of voluntary offseason programs. Everybody kind of relaxed here. I think that everybody kind of freaked out when they saw this because Daneille Hunter, obviously a very talented football player for the Minnesota Vikings, but this just comes down to contract. Hunter wants the bag because, honestly, for the start of his NFL career, he's been a top 10 edge in the league. Obviously, dealing with those 2 injuries that he had in the 2020 season and the 2021 season. 2020, obviously he had that neck surgery in the offseason that Mike Zimmer, the infamous quote, said it was just a tweak, and then it turned out to not just be a tweak, and he turned out having to get neck surgery. Obviously in that 2021 season, he dealt with that torn pec that happened during the Cowboys game, so he was only able to play 7 games. But back in 2019, when he was fully healthy, he was 14.5 sacks. In 2018, it's not shown up here, but he was 14.5 sacks again that season. Daneille, he's been one of the best edge rushers in the league. It just comes down to him staying healthy. But here are the kind of the contract details on why Daneille wants out. This year, he's only set to make $4.9 million. $4.9 million. For right reason, Daneille Hunter wants to be paid more. He deserves more than $4.9 million on this year's cap. But a reason why the Vikings won't make this move before June 1st. They would lose $5.7 million, if they were to trade or release him before the June 1st deadline. If they were to do this after June 1st, the Vikings would save $5.5 million on this year's cap, but they would be taking on $7.6 million in dead cap space for this year's cap. So realistically, you're still losing $2 million. my whole take with this, with kind of like just this contract news is everything, you might just have to extend him. I mean, if you cut him, you're losing money. If you trade him, you're losing money. I think this is the situation. The Vikings have been pushing this can or kicking this can down the curb, and now you finally got to pay that credit card bill. And I just think the Vikings might just have to trade him or extend him again. I think the Vikings are going to have to add on a couple more years to his deal because I still think Daneille Hunter, production-wise, he can still be a very good edge in the NFL. And I think edges, you need them. They're the ones that disrupt the quarterback, who is the most important position in this game during the modern-day NFL. I just think the Vikings cap space is very sticky here. I think the Vikings are going to have to trade him. But coming up next on today's show, we're going to be talking about a trade for Budda Baker. We'll kind of hop into all of that and more. Budda did request a trade by or from the Arizona Cardinals. So we'll be talking about trading for the star-studded safety. But at first, I want to get into the Vikings draft hats because we got a great deal going on over at our partners at Fanatics. If you go to chatsports.com/Vikings draft, you can get one of these sweet draft hats here. They look way better than they have in years past. I'm going to be rocking mine on draft day. You should too. chatsports.com/Vikings draft. So Budda Baker, is he getting the boot from the Arizona Cardinals? We'll talk about it. So he requested a trade from Arizona on Friday, and he's owed $13 million in this upcoming year with a $14.2 million club option in the following year. Budda, he's a 5-time Pro Bowler in 2017 and then in 2019 to 2020. And he's also an elite locker room presence and a leader. He plays with that swagger. He plays with that tenacity that you want from somebody in the secondary. Very similar to a guy like Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor in those kind of Legion of Boom days. Love the energy Budda brings. But he's a tackling machine from that safety position. Last year, 111 tackles. The year before that, 98. 2020, 118 tackles. Then back in 2019, the most tackles he's had in a season, he had 147 tackles. He's one of the best tackling safeties. He's more of a box, and he's very similar to our very own Harrison Smith. But the question with Budda Baker, he wants to become the highest paid safety in the league. And if we're looking at the list right now, Derwin James, he's set to make $19 million. Minka, $18. Jamal Adams, $17.5. Jesse Bates, $16, and then also, like I said, our very own Harrison Smith set at $16 million. I just don't think Kwesi is going to want to give up 26, so about $36 million to the safety room if Budda does want to get up to that $20 million per year range. Right now, he's already sitting at $14.5. And he wants to be the highest paid safety in the league. I just don't think Kwesi would ever kind of roll something like that out, considering the Vikings are last in cap space. But the Vikings safety depth chart right now, obviously you love Harrison Smith. What he's done for this kind of franchise over the past couple of years has been special. It's just his whole career. Cam Bynum had a drop back or a fallback year in this past season, but Lewis Cine, the safety out of Georgia, I'll be getting into him more in a second. But here's the trade idea that I kind of cooked up here. Just a third-round pick. Next year's third, obviously the Vikings do have a third this year, but I'm thinking they're going to want to hang on to it. Budda most likely would have demanded a first or a second, but he's going to want a lot of money. So that's kind of why I decided to fall on a third-round pick. Give up a third, you're going to have to make him the highest-paid safety in the league. I just don't think the Vikings are necessarily too interested in doing that. But overall, I'm excited to see Lewis Cine play next year. That's why I don't think you need to go and trade for a guy like a Budda Baker. And the Vikings kind of the Vikings name has been thrown into a bunch of kind of safety rumors. Should they draft a safety? Should they take Brian Branch? Whoever it may be, the Vikings as a team has always been linked to safeties. But I'm excited to see Lewis Cine. He was hurt in that Saints game in London last year, and he really never got to kind of get his feet wet in the NFL. But people forget, he was taken 32nd overall last season. He was an absolute hitter at Georgia, and he's that very kind of versatile type of safety that fits very well with Brian Flores and what he wants to do. Expect the Vikings to get creative with Lewis Cine, play him in the box, play him deep half coverage. Whatever it may be, Lewis Cine should be very active. Could be a big-time player for the Vikings next season. I want to show him some love in the comment section because I think us Vikings fans, we've kind of forgotten about Lewis Cine, that he is a first-round pick coming back next year, and I'm also very excited to see other guys like Caleb Evans, Andrew Booth, those second-year guys in the secondary that play aggressive, play downhill, they hit. Vikings could be cooking up something special on defense. So Type 6, showing some love. As always, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. See you next time. Skol Vikes.